Welcome, everyone. Well, it seems tritypes is not that popular as there are very few viewers currently, but who knows, maybe it's going to change during the stream. Well, at least then you get all the attention you want if you have any questions or remarks or disagree with me. If so, please put it in the chat. I am happy to answer all questions and remarks and disagreements. So, welcome to Exposed Bad Enneagram Theories. Last week we destroyed the combination of MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, and the Enneagram. And today we're going to do tritypes, mainly because of Reddit. There's a very active Enneagram subreddit where they either do MBTI and the Enneagram, which is bad, or they do tritypes, which fortunately has not yet become popular in the Netherlands or in Europe. But we'll see today that tritypes is complete nonsense. It is garbage, and we're happy to demonstrate that. So if there are no questions, remarks, or otherwise disagreements, let's get into it. Let's see what the tritypes is all about. So first of all, you can see Enneagram tritype is a trademark. I can hardly complain about trademarks, given that I trademarked the neurogram, my model inspired by the Enneagram. I did that just to protect the neurogram model against people who mess it up, like the tritype system. But that might not be the case for tritypes. Tritypes has been made up by Katherine Fauvre, and it's basically the combination of 3 different Enneagram types. But let's see what she says about it. So it's all. So let's start at the second paragraph. The Enneagram tritype consists of 1 Enneagram type in each center of intelligence: head, heart, and gut. Now, here we have already the first mistake. There are no head, heart, and gut centers of intelligence. This is just something that is, a myth going around the internet. You can say that if you take it as a metaphor, so we have triads, we have 9 types within the Enneagram. They divide into 3 triads, and and each triad has a specific behavior that they will do. So we have the thinkers, the doers, and people very concerned about their image. And of course, if you say thinking, then as we think with our head, you can say, okay, the metaphor for thinking would be the head. But then things get really weird, because if you go for doing and then you're somehow say, okay, we have the doers, and the metaphor for doers is the gut, it makes no longer any sense. And the same with feeling. It's our heart. Oh, I love you so much. But unfortunately, also feelings are produced by the brain. But more importantly, the third triad is not the feeling triad, it's the imago triad. So now you have to link the metaphor of the heart between the imago. So if you take it as a metaphor, it's a very bad metaphor. It doesn't work. If you take it literally, as it seems that the tritypes does, it's just stupid. So so first of all, the triads, the thinkers, the doers, and the imago people act like that because they can't deal with something. So the thinkers can't deal with fear, the doers can't deal with anger, and the imago people can't deal with sadness. But it has to be taken. Sadness has to be understood as separation anxiety. These are actually 3 different centers in the brain. the work of the neuroscientist Panksepp has done deep brain stimulation with magnetics and electrodes. And if you stimulate very deeply, I can show it on camera, here in the brainstem, there are 3 regions. If you stimulate them, it immediately produces either fear, anger, or sadness. But again, sadness taken as separation anxiety. So this is purely biology. And the 3 triads is basically these 3 centers. There are 2 centers that you are able to control reasonably well. There's 1 center that you are unable to control, and that is the reason why you're in one of those triads. But it has nothing to do with the head, the heart, and the gut. Actually, it has a lot to do with the head, but for all types, it's only in the head. So the center of intelligence, this is this idea that we also have brain cells in our heart, in our gut. Well, there are not brain cells because brain cells are in the brain. There are nerve cells, and they are quite like brain cells, but not exactly the same. And we need them. There are a couple of 100,000 in our heart, and we need them to make our heart work. And there are about 100 and I mean maybe 100, maybe 200 billion in our gut, a huge amount of these nerve cells. But that only goes to show how extremely difficult it is to process our food. So they are all busy that. Everything you experience, all your subjective experience, what you feel, what you imagine, all your inner self-talk, smells and taste that you can remember, is all produced by the brain. So if you would take it literally, then it immediately goes to fail. But again, this is not typical for tritypes. This is actually being used by a lot of Enneagram people. I maybe can do a whole program on head, heart, and gut. It just simply doesn't make sense. So straight away, the whole, I would almost say, presupposition of tritypes fails. This is just a stupid way of looking at the Enneagram. But it gets worse. Again, if there are questions, remarks, please put them in the chat. If you disagree with me, I'm more than happy to discuss it. Okay, for those of you that have asked about tritypes, a short introduction. Yay! 20 years of research, hundreds of coaching sessions, tens of thousands of Enneagram tests, results, and multiple studies, but unnamed, have demonstrated that identifying and understanding your Enneagram tritype can significantly enhance your journey of self-discovery. Okay, hypnotic language patterns. For those people who know neuro-linguistic programming, this is just a hypnosis. This doesn't clarify anything. It is just astrology, of turning the Enneagram into astrology. And it doesn't say anything. You can also turn it around if tens of thousands of Enneagram tests give tritype as a result. This is a clear proof that the Enneagram test is basically wrong. This is just a stupid way of going about things. The 3 types within your tritype intersect, creating a unique defense strategy. Again, it is Freudian psychotherapy has already been completely, dismantled by science. It is not scientific at all. And focus of attention, again, more hypnotic language patterns. It doesn't clarify anything. This is your tritype archetype. Whatever the 3 types in your tritype share in common will be amplified. And here we have already a second big mistake. That is the thing that people have, that Enneagram types have stuff that is in common. And that they share in common. This is basically wrong. So the whole idea of the Enneagram is to make clear that there are differences between people, that different people are very much different from each other. And any attempt to make the divide between people smaller is wrong. The Enneagram should create a bigger divide. So people who have the same brain type as you, because Enneagram types, if you look into it scientifically, turn into brain types. If you look into brain types, then any person with the same brain type as you is pretty much acting in a way that is very similar to you, but all the other 8s are completely different, the other 8 types. They are so different that they are in fact more like aliens from outer space than real humans. We really have the tendency to only see ourselves, see people with the same brain type as humans, and the other 8 as aliens from outer space. Which makes them, by the way, very interesting. So if all people would share stuff, that makes them less interesting, not more interesting. Because then basically everyone is like you. And why would you care about the others if they're so much like you? So this is a big, big mistake, which is also I think the biggest mistake of tritypes is that it tries to incorporate so much in everyone that everyone becomes a gray mouse, and the system completely fails. It already failed before, but now we have a second reason why it fails. This creates a more singular focus. No, it doesn't. If you have all kinds of types sharing things in common, it does not give focus. It actually defocuses everything, which can be positive. It can't be positive because it defocuses. It will be negative for your health and emotional intelligence. The high tide of this intersection is that it gives you your life direction, focus, and purpose. Well, we don't need that because it was already given us by the Enneagram type. Pointless to change that. The low side of this intersection is that it creates a blind spot which can narrow your ability to accurate self-assess and may keep you locked in self-defeating patterns. Again, astrology, it will basically try to scare you into buying into tritypes. Well, we're not buying into it. It is just a bullshit argument. And in fact, it is contradicting what they said before, because there are blind sides in the Enneagram. These are people that have a different Enneagram type than you, and you have no connection with them, and you kind of live in the same world, but as you do not connect, you're moving through the world without actually seeing each other that clearly. But the moment you start to incorporate more and more types in your own type, then in effect what happens is that according to the theory, you should have less blind spots, because now you have all these other types that you're also connecting with. So the blind spots actually decrease once you start to believe in tritypes. Of course, the blind spots don't disappear. It's just that when you use tritypes, you become more blinder to the blind spots that already exist. Why? Because you're trying to incorporate all these other types into yourself, and that will just create the way you think, oh, I'm also like that person, even though he has a different type, and that blinds you for the fact that the other person is completely different than you are. At least his or her evolutionary behavioral patterns are completely different from yours. So that is not only wrong, it is actually self-contradicting, which is always a sign of bullshit. Most people who create bullshit find it very hard to bullshit consistently. They will tend to sell you so much bullshit that they sell you bullshit that is self-contradictory, that is contradicting what they were saying before. Oh, not too fast. Tritype explained these distinct differences of those sharing the same Enneagram type. Okay, yeah, that's also what is done by wings. You don't need tritypes for that. You can do wings. For example, an 874 is a fast-paced, optimistic, creative, and emotional type 8, whereas the 826 is a more dutiful, heroic, loyal, and helpful type 8. And this is a clear indication that she does know Enneagrams well, but not that good, or not that well to understand that this is just the difference between an 8 with a 9 wing and an 8 with a 7 wing. So the fast-paced, optimistic, creative, and emotional type is the 7 wing, and the dutiful, heroic, loyal, and helpful type is the 9 wing. So it's just we don't need tritype at all for this kind of differences within one type. You can do everything you want with wings. Why don't you scroll nicely? Additionally, tritype explains why those sharing the same 3 Enneagram types or tritype have a natural affinity for one another. For example, the 126, 216, and 612 are all focused on people, doing what we should be done, helping those in need, and being supportive for others, regardless of what type is dominant. And here, again, we see the same mistake. This is creating sameness rather than differences. And this is turning everyone into a gray mouse. Of course, the whole idea of here is that what they are supposing, but they're supposing it wrong. They're assuming stuff that is basically false, and that there would be a natural affinity. It's simply not the case that there's a natural affinity between the 1 and the 6 and the 2 and the 6. There are affinities between the 1 and the 2, but that's because they're neighbors. But there are no affinities between 1 and 2 and 6. So here you can see that they're actually, and this is also what happens a lot when people come up, when they think of a theory rather than look into reality and see what is happening, they actually think up a theory and then they will change reality of their description of reality. Of course, reality won't be changed by this file, by this story. They change their description of reality in such a way that it fits their theory. But of course, we are not believing anything of that. 1s and 2s share an affinity because they're neighbors, but the 1 and 2 are completely different from the 6. And so this whole story falls apart. Most importantly, your tritype combination identifies key aspects of your personality, which, when understood, can illuminate your path to greater self-awareness and a more fulfilling life. And here we have more hypnotic language patterns, more astrology. We're promising you the world, but we're not going to actually clarify how you're going to be able to do that. So, are there any questions so far? If there are questions, please put them in the chat, then I will answer them. If not, I will change from the description of tritypes according to the creator to a simple presentation, because then we go delve into what is really wrong with tritypes. Not seeing any questions so far. So let's move to the presentation. What is wrong with tritypes? Well, we already discussed a number of things that are wrong with tritypes, but now we're going to do it more systematically. So the first problem is astrology, as you already saw. Tritypes makes abundantly use of hypnotic language patterns. These are basically the same patterns that people use to sell astrology. We know from research that you can structure your language in such a way that anyone will recognize themselves in a well-written hypnotic language pattern text. That is what's happening in astrology. And it is very bad if the Enneagram is turned into astrology. Nevertheless, tritypes does exactly that, or at least tries to attempt to do that. So that is the first reason why we don't like it, or should be thrown out of the world of Enneagram. The second problem is also shared with astrology, is that it is based on recognizing patterns. But recognizing stuff is very suspect. So our brain is great at recognizing stuff. It has a big evolutionary advantage to recognize the same stuff as the same. Because if you say you're in the 100,000 years ago, you're living in the jungle or on a mountain, probably more likely, because I'm going to tell about black bears and brown bears. Say you live in the mountains in 100,000 years ago, and you go out to look for food, and you have never seen a bear in your life. And on day one, for the first time, you meet a black bear, and your brain goes, "Oh, well, it looks nice. What to do with this bear? Shall I fight it, or shall I hug it, or shall I kill it? Maybe get it, change it, eat a bear burger rather than hamburgers. A nice bear rug for in my what is it? A cave, probably cavemen 100,000 years ago. So the brain goes into this deliberation mode, and well, sooner or later, we're going to discover that black bears are quite dangerous animals. They're very nasty animals. They are aggressive, and they fight. And it's very hard to survive a bear attack. But say that we do survive the bear attack on day one, and day two, we recover very quickly. We go out to find some food for us. And on day 2, we meet a brown bear, different color, smaller size. It is a great evolutionary advantage to be able to see the brown bear as somewhat like the black bear. So we recognize the bear in the brown bear, even though we've never seen a brown bear before and only experienced black bears. Or grizzly bears, maybe. I don't know what they're called in English. We call them, literally translate, black bears, but it could be grizzly bears. Apologies for all the US watchers if you wondered what a black bear was. And so being able to recognize the brown bear, as a dangerous creature, a dangerous animal, even though you've never experienced a brown bear before, is a clear evolutionary advantage. And that's the reason why nowadays our brain is great at recognizing patterns. If you go into a room, you have never been there, completely different chairs, you've never seen those chairs, your brain immediately knows what are the chairs and what are not chairs. So anything based on recognition is very suspect. And you can see that the whole idea of tritypes is completely turning about how we recognize the behaviors of other brain types or other Enneagram types in ourselves. Well, first of all, there is a type 9 mediator, the brain type 9 mediator, or Enneagram type 9 mediator, who actually has, as an evolutionary behavioral pattern, the ability to recognize himself or herself in almost anything. That is a specific trait that is only, or I should not say trait, I don't like trait theories. I should say this is a specific evolutionary behavioral pattern that only works for people with a type 9 brain. So it's highly likely that the creator of tritypes has a type 9 mediator brain and simply has come up with a theory, probably in times of stress, to explain why she recognizes herself in so many types. But in reality, again, the recognition is suspect, and it is only happening for people with a type 9 mediator brain. Instead, what should we do instead? Rather than trying to recognize ourselves, but you can also, I should maybe stress it one more time. So the whole reason why people should try tritypes, according to the creator, is because they recognize behaviors of other types in themselves. And this is basically wrong, because first of all, recognition is suspect. Second of all, the fact that you recognize it doesn't mean it's the same. It basically means that your brain is capable of reframing or framing completely different behaviors as if they were like your own. Again, and it is much more important that we actually see how people are different from us, with people with different brain types or Enneagram types, than that we should see how people are like us. So it is just bad Enneagram theory or bad Enneagram practice, actually, to base your typing on recognition. Instead of what you should do is, rather than not try to recognize your type, what you should do is see if you can find evolutionary behavioral patterns for each type that are so crazy, so stupid in your view of the world, or your view subjective experience, that you basically say, okay, if they do such stupid shit like that, I would never do that. In fact, I doubt it actually if people actually would do stuff like that, because that is just too stupid to be true. This is always the fun part in my training programs, is when people say stuff like that. Now, Joost, what you're saying now, that's not what people would do ever. They would never, ever do stuff like that. And then some of the people who recognize that behavior with themselves, they say, well, actually, that's how I act. And again, this is not to say that those people, those that recognize that strange and crazy behavior, learn their type. No, it's the other person, the person who says, this is so stupid, so crazy, I would never, ever behave like this. Because they learned something. They can now cross off one of the 9 types. And basically, how do you find your own Enneagram type or brain type? Is by being able to cross out 8 other types. as soon as you how you say, where was I? I forgot it, but that is because there was a remark. I'm just trying to read the remark and my brain shifted. So there's a good remark by Fox Mulder. This head, heart, and gut theory merged in some fake NLP too, unfortunately. Yes, unfortunately it did. And even worse, even Richard Bandler, the creator of NLP, has been, infected by it. So, but NLP is a bit different because they say, for those who don't know NLP, it's neuro-linguistic programming. Because they say, okay, if you feel something in your chest, it is your heart producing the feelings. And if you feel it in your stomach or in your belly, then it's your gut that produces the feelings. And if it's your brain, if you feel it inside your head, but they don't think that you can feel stuff in your head, which is also against reality, then they say it's your brain feeling. But of course, this is ludicrous because if you feel something inside your chest, the feeling is produced by your brain. If you're feeling something in your stomach, again, the feeling is produced in your brain. Sure, there might be signals going back and forth between the body. Why not? It happens often. But those signals are not necessary. In fact, there is a neuroscientist, Damasio, and he has found as-if body loops in the brain. And these as-if body loops actually produce your subjective feeling, not only of your emotions, but also of pain, of itches, and anything else that you can feel. And you can perfectly have as-if body loops going on in the brain without any information coming in from the body, which means that you can basically cut off our head and still feel, and if you can keep the head alive, of course. It's a theoretical exercise so far. But if you basically cut off the head and then be able to keep the head alive and make sure that all the blood and whatever is needed, oxygen is kept flowing, then you'll still be able to feel stuff. And you'll still be able to feel stuff in your stomach, even though you have no longer any stomach, or in your chest. It will then pretty much look as if people have, I call them in English, if you have a pain in a limb that is no longer there, then you would have emotions like that. Same as locked-in syndrome. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that. Though people in locked-in syndrome still feel emotions in their body. That is a very interesting point. If you know more about it, please let me know. While I'm continuing with taking down tritypes. Oh, yes, they still feel emotions inside their body, even though there's no connection, no communications with their body. Well, that's good to learn. See, brilliant stream. I'm learning as well as you are. Yes, thoughts, but thoughts are in the brain, so that is obvious. But that I can feel emotions in parts of their body without their running information or being able to control their body is very interesting. Yes, we also have Tononi who done the work on locked-in body syndrome. But let's continue with tritypes. So it's astrology. Why? Hypnotic language patterns. It's based on trying to recognize stuff rather than trying to recognize. It's based on trying to recognize what you do rather than recognizing what you will never ever do. And it violates the MARCO acronym. MARCO stands for measurable, active, reliable, control, and observable. And that is basically the 5 criteria that is needed to have something as external behavior. And external behavior can actually be reality checked. And so if you go back to the text of the tritypes, you can see here 1, 2, 6, 2, 1, 6, 6, and 2 are all focused on people. Okay, being focused on people is not behavior. Doing what should be done, well, that is of course too general. So that is also not behavior. helping those in need. Well, that's all, again, very general, so not actually concrete external behavior. And again, being supportive of others, again, no behavior. And so it's easy to come up with hypnotic language patterns if you use generalizations, unspecified verbs and stuff like that. Status, that's all the things that we don't like because they violate the Marco acronym. Again, it has to be measurable. You have to do it yourself, active. If that person can do it, it's not behavior. It has to be reliable, measured. You have to be in control of it, and it has to be observable. So that is the first big reason why tritypes makes no sense and is complete bullshit. It is garbage. The second is also that one that I already mentioned during the explanation of what tritypes are. The tritypes decrease the divide. They make the divide between persons smaller. And many times we want to make the divide between persons smaller. If there's a fight, if there's a war, we want people to come together, to connect, to get closer. But with the Enneagram and with brain types, it's the opposite way around. The Enneagram is a powerful model for the single reason, well, two reasons. The first reason is that it explains differences, that it actually explains why people are completely different at sometimes than you are, why they act crazy, why they do stupid shit that you would never, ever do. And progress within the Enneagram means that we are able to make this divide between the different types bigger, that we are able to actually become better and better at explaining why people act so differently from us. So if you decrease the divide as tritypes does, then everybody becomes the same gray mouse. But we want to make sure that you get a bigger division between the types. Tritypes doesn't do that, so it's backward, it is a failure. People should basically ignore it. Tritypes runs counter to neuroscience. So one of the big things that neuroscience discovered is that there are no categories but areas. So I'll quickly check to see if I can come up with the right graph. It is my, don't get scared because it's my graph about psychopathologies, because that's the only one that I have currently quickly available in with the Enneagram sign in it. So again, here the eight big circles that you see, those are the big five, but then it's the psychopathology of the big five, where people do too much of their type or too little of another type. And these are 8, of course. 8 is not the same as 9. There's the type 6 has to be smuggled in somewhere between here. But again, this is not to explain how cybernetic big five theory works. I'm more than happy to do that. In fact, let me just add a link in the chat where you can find all about. There's a whole free, almost 2-hour lecture that you can watch for free on this website. That explains cybernetic big five theory, and then you can basically understand how it connects to the Enneagram. But the importance of this graph or the scheme is that you can actually see this as a map. So you can actually see this as a map of all evolutionary behavioral patterns. And so if we zoom in quite a lot, and you can see the Enneagram more clearly. So you have type 9 mediator on top of it. The type 3 is my type here on the right bottom corner. 6s are over here to the left bottom corner. And this is a map. So for instance, my brain type, when I'm neither stressed nor relaxed, I am how you say, in the area of antisocial personality disorder, mania, apophenia, and hallucinations. And rigidity, that's the area where I am, if I am very messed up and unhealthy, but it just happens to be the only scheme that has the Enneagram that I have available on short notice. But if I stress, then I move towards the type 9. I become more dependent. Dependency issues start. I start to over-adjust and become more political correctness or too polite. But if I relax, I move to the area of the 6, and I get more of the thinking part. Of course, it's all negative, but when I relax, it's not negative at all. Just to be clear, I'll add the healthy model as well, so that you at least get an idea of where I go when relaxed. So I remember that just missing the Enneagram sign here. So I'm here in the neighborhood of extraversion, enthusiast, assertive. If I'm stressed, I move to agreeableness, stability, compassion, and politeness. And if I'm relaxed, I move to detached, submissive, and unenthusiastic. That is basically the area where where my brain is capable of going. Now, here's the problem for tritypes. If you think in categories, then you can make up all the categories you want, as Katherine Fauvre is doing with tritypes. But as soon as you think in terms of a map, and you basically know which areas you can go, then suddenly there are areas where it's very difficult to go. So, for instance, for my type 3 brain, I have very much trouble to go to disinhibition, undisciplined and disorganized, or to go to industrious orderliness, or to go to callous and belligerent. It's just areas of the map where my brain doesn't go. The biological hardware structure of my brain simply doesn't allow for those evolutionary behavioral patterns. But again, that of course would be the case if tritypes were to be true. Fortunately, tritypes is false, because we know that that if you would accept tritypes, and you would accept that you have something of the 3 types in each of the triads. Let me rephrase that. If you have 1 type in each of the 3 triads, you get 3 types for yourself. So 3 sets of behavioral evolutionary patterns, and you get the wings, of course, and you get the stress and relaxation patterns. So you end up basically with the whole map. Well, there simply are no persons who have done the whole map. It just simply doesn't exist. So let me again take that. See if I can find it very quickly. This is research by Struss, a Polish scientist who has done research with about 1,000 students, and they show that all the behavioral patterns, all the personality traits, Struss is still calling personality traits. He's not yet on the on board on the things, on the cybernetic Big Five theory school of thought. But here you have the 8 clusters that are found by Struss, research with 1,000 students. And so what Tritypes is saying is that these 8 clusters do not exist. That cannot be true, that the 8 clusters that Struss found exist, and that Tritypes has any meaning at all. Now, given that Struss, of course, is a scientist, is peer-reviewed, and this is very influential on thinking within personality traits, and even in cybernetic Big Five theory, evolutionary behavioral patterns, it is simply that science negates tritypes. You cannot be scientific and have tritypes at the same time. And tritypes is basically running flagrantly against the science. So stop using the tritypes. It makes no sense. It is wrong. So that's what I say here. It would entail brains that simply do not exist. We simply do not find brains that would be able to do all those different behavioral patterns that suddenly in tritypes you would be able to. And finally, that's already what I also explained at the beginning of the stream. The head, heart, and gut is nonsense, and Wings explained it much better. And there's no need for all this nonsense. There's no need for tritypes. In fact, tritypes is a degradation of the Enneagram model. Of course, the Enneagram is not scientific either, so you're more than welcome to read my paper on cybernetic Big Five theory, how you can use cybernetic Big Five theory as a way to make the Enneagram more in line with science. I'll put the link into the chat. Any questions so far? Any remarks, questions, or otherwise? Otherwise, I'm thanking you for viewing this. I'm happy to have done it with a number of you. Oh, there is Fox is saying thanks again. Yes. Well, this has been a stream that has a very particular or a very specific purpose. So I can basically, within discussions on the subreddit, on Enneagram in Reddit, I can basically now link to this video whenever they try to promote tritypes. So thank you all for watching. Tomorrow we will do something special again, of course. We'll return with philosophy, and we're going to discuss in Dutch. So if you don't understand Dutch, it's not going to be very helpful for you. But it will be in Dutch on the philosopher Richard Rorty. And we will discuss how Rorty has figured out how to determine what is mental and what is physical. We look into his book, The Philosophy and the Mirror of Nature, which is promoting pragmatism against coherence and correspondence theory of truth. And then we'll finally end with his work on contingencies and irony and solidarity, although I probably don't do the solidarity part, but we'll probably do the contingency and the irony part. So tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central European Standard Time, we are going to discuss the philosopher Richard Rorty. It will be very interesting. Hopefully I will see you again. See you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Bye, bye, bye for now. Bye, bye, bye.